What the hell? It's JLL, that Gnostic teacher on the internet. But for the purposes of magic, you can call me Tezca. I'm here on January 6th, 2018, believe it or not. And I'm talking to you for the purpose of laying out the design of the spell, namely the killing spell, which goes out to the world under the name of the Charlotte working. To begin, let me say that your response so far to this awesome and daring adventure, this proposal of an extraordinary nature, has been in itself extraordinary. You've really done me proud in the comments that you're leaving on the talks leading up to this event. I really have to say that I couldn't ask for better. You're both civil and savvy, and you're upping the ante as we go along. And that's how it works in the game of magic. You up the ante all the time. Also, I want to say that the timing of this ritual is going to be very precise, and the whole undertaking will proceed with lightning speed. So I'm here to talk about the timing and the precision that is involved in casting a spell. So let the Charlotte working be exemplary of all Gaian Tantric magic in the future. The structure, the design, the timing, the location, the celestial omens, all of these factors go into the casting of a spell on the planetary scale. This is a spell cast on the planetary scale. It's not just a spell intended to kill a particular target. It's more than that. It involves much more than that, as I hope to make clear to you as I proceed in this talk. You can consider this talk to be the pre-briefing for the move into the spell, the move to action. I want to assure you that we're right on time with this project. I myself had a bit of hesitation a couple of days ago. Actually started to record this talk a couple of days ago, I think on the 4th, but something didn't feel right. Well, you know, or maybe you don't know. Who knows? Well, you're going to know now. Sometimes I just need to have a really big cry. And I was feeling the need for a big cry. I still do, actually, and somewhere soon. I'm pretty sure that will break forth. It's not a cry of sadness or tragedy or anything of that sort. Nah. I'm talking gratitude and relief, cry of delight, a sobbing that comes from the deepest depths. I mean, sobbing of joy and gratitude. And that sobbing from the Nahual's heart is sort of like the warrior cry for the spell. The warrior cry is a big cry. And around the 26th of January this month, by which time the spell will have been completed, the spell will have been cast, marks the 9th anniversary of the day that I released Planetary Tantra on the internet. Many of you may know that Planetary Tantra derives from a terma, a wisdom treasure. I received that terma on August 8th, 2008. Now, contained within that terma was the entire kit and formula and method of Gaian Tantric magic, and even the app which you're going to use to perform this magic. but I haven't really disclosed to the world how to use that app. So try to get your mind around that fact, okay? That I've been living with this for 9 years. 9 years, my friends, 9.5 to be precise. 9 years and 3 months is one half rotation of the lunar nodes. Well, also, there was something missing that only fell into place in November. For some years now, I've been discussing in the circle of my tantric allies and collaborators, the warriors in the Kalika party of the Nahual of Infinity Ridge, have been discussing the question of command syntax. Command syntax refers to the complete formula that is required to command the power of the earth to perform a spell. So I had the kit for the spell. I had everything that was required. And I also had the assurance. I got the insurance too. The Kali 10 MAKARA seal insurance policy. No, but I digress. I also had the assurance of the Aeonic Mother herself that she would show me 3 spells in recognition for receiving her terma. The first was a love spell. I've talked a lot about that, but I still haven't revealed the key of it. The trick. Second was the death spell, which I am now imparting to you. And the third is a spell of transference called Passage of Command, which I am now also imparting to you. So in the Charlotte working, I impart to you my mastery of sorcery. That is a very great fact. It's something to be joyous about, and something that evokes tears from the deepest place in the heart. Tears like nectar pour into the chalice of the heart, and the chalice overflows, and you sob. So don't be surprised if there's a big cry coming your way as well. And as you and I enter this adventure together, bear in mind that since the Turton received the term of Gaia Awakening in August of 2008, he's been holding all of the components required for this spell, but there was one factor missing to complete the command syntax, and that came on November 8th, 2017, as I was standing at the place where this spell will be cast. I call it Charlotte's Ridge. I'll be posting a picture of Charlotte's Ridge so you can see where this ritual is performed. Now that I have the complete command syntax, the moment has come and all the omens are in place. I emphasize to you, as I always have from the beginning of speaking about planetary tantra and Gaian tantric magic, that there is pleasure in the precision of this art. Pleasure in the precision of this art. I am calling you all to be precisely on time with me as I perform this ritual. There is a window of opportunity of 17 hours centered around January 16th, 2018, in which this ritual will be performed. So I will inform you of the exact moment so that you, wherever you are in the world, can bring your attention to the action that I will be undertaking at that moment. and bring your warrior power and your rage and your love and all the beauty that you can summon out of your life in recognition of she who gives you life. Bring all of that to that moment, and you will have the app in your hand. For right now, I want you to know some of the parameters I'm using as I structure this magic spell, the Charlotte working. The first open demonstration of Gaian Tantric magic before the eyes of the world. There is an omen of war in the sky. You know, Tezca comes from Tezcatlipoca, which is really the name of a Toltec shaman. But there's a close interface between Toltec sorcery and Aztec sorcery. So Tezcatlipoca can be known or identified either as Toltec or Aztec. There are great, great secrets in this ancient Mexican sorcery which have never been revealed. They were sealed away in chambers of memory, which are preserved in the organic light, like, what is the word? Like freezer vaults. And when you go into these freezer vaults, which I call the conicals of the organic light, the memory conicals, you find completely intact holographic images that display performances of magic and also display a great deal of information about the prehistory of the human species, things that have never been written down, actions that have never been or could not ever have been recorded are preserved in the holographic arrays, the holographic hieroglyphic arrays of the conicals in the Five Below region of the organic light. I call it Five Below because when you enter it, you begin to see your own breath, and you have the sensation of being at the temperature of 5 below zero. Sudden drop of the temperature, not as extreme as 5 degrees, but usually around a degree or degree and a half, is common to those who come into contact with the organic light. So anyway, Tezca speaks, and Tezca tells you there's an omen of war in the sky. Now the Aztecs, of course, were intensely interested in omens of war because they were constantly at war in one way or another. Now some of these wars were only ceremonial. They were called flower wars, and they were merely demonstrations of the skill of the warriors from the different tribes in the valley of Mexico. But some of them were wars of killing, and some of them were sorcery contests with extremely lethal consequences. The omen of war that attends this event includes 2 parts, one you can observe and one you cannot. If you are awake anywhere in the world before dawn during the month of January, you can observe the conjunction of Mars and Jupiter in the constellation of the Scales. Now that is not the sign Libra, that is actually the visible constellation, a composite of stars known as the Scales or Balance. It's located between the Virgin and the Scorpion. Again, I'm not referring to Virgo and Scorpio, which are starless astrological sectors of the ecliptic plane. I'm referring to the actual starry constellations, the real sky zodiac that you can observe, so you might want to go out and do just that. It's easy to see and you really can't miss it. And you might want to use the IT app stellarium.org to orient yourself to what you're going to see. There in the morning sky before the sun rises, and the sun is now positioned in the constellation of the Archer, you will see 2 bright lights which are not stars, they are planets. Mars, and Jupiter. And if you picture the constellation of the scales as a structure with a vertical shaft, a crossbeam, and two pans hanging from the beams, picture the scales in such a way that the pan on the left side is lower, the pan on the right side is higher, and right now, or to be precise, in 2 days, on the 8th of January, these planets are in exact conjunction in 19 degrees of Scorpio, which places them very close to the fulcrum or vertex of the scales, the vertical beam, the vertical post of the scales, okay? The center of the scales. This entire operation of the Charlotte working is timed to this omen of war, which the Aztecs, the Toltecs, and those ancient warrior shaman peoples would have observed with keen attention. During the ensuing period after the spell is cast, around January 15th or 16th, the planet Jupiter will make a retrograde loop around that vertical shaft, the central support of the balance or scales. And the significance of this is something for you to understand imaginatively and conceptually in order to follow through with the ritual in progress. Now there's a second planetary omen which plays a really key role in the structure and construction of this ritual, and that is the superior conjunction of Venus with the Sun. Now some of you may know that the ancient Aztecs and all the peoples of ancient Mexico, Toltecs, Aztecs, and the Maya, paid extremely close attention to the cycles of Venus. And for them, Venus was in fact the main omen of war and the omen of various periodic tribal rituals that they would perform for the renewal of the life of their culture. So Venus, when you study archaeoastronomy of the ancient sites of Mexico, at Teotihuacan, the sites at, what's the other place I'm thinking of? Well, Chichen Itza, of course, the sites of the Maya and the Olmec, Monte Alban, yeah, the Zapotec temple of Monte Alban, other places like that, many dozens really of temples in Central America were aligned to Venus. Stairway to the Stars by Anthony Aveni, who was a specialist on the archaeoastronomy of Mexico, has a whole chapter on Venus Star Wars and the observation of Venus as an omen of war. Well, the observation of Venus in this case is not something that you can actually observe because Venus is currently, as I speak, behind the Sun. It's on the other side of the Sun from the Earth. That's called superior conjunction. And there's a remarkable anomaly connected with the superior conjunction of Venus, which happens, fairly often, every 2 or 3 years or so, maybe more frequently, I don't know. You can check it out. There's a remarkable anomaly connected with the current cycle of the superior conjunction of Venus with the Sun. They are both located right now against the background of the constellation of the Archer, in the middle body of the Archer. You should picture the Archer as a centaur, and the human or male part of the Archer, which can also be pictured as the female Dakini Kurukula, is drawing a bow. So there is a forward hand holding the bow, and there is the hand pulling the string back, and where the vein of the arrow is located, near the hand pulling the string, that's where the Sun and Venus are currently located. You see, you get the picture, against the background of the Archer which is not the sign Sagittarius. Well, the remarkable anomaly is that although the cycle of Venus in Superior conjunction happens fairly often, the time that it takes on this occasion for Venus to come out from around the sun and to appear as the evening star, visible just at twilight in the west, well, that period of time is, or it seems to me, to be extraordinarily long. So you have to go ahead until, about April, really, from now, February, March, April, it's still a little over 3 months from now, Venus will become visible due to its separation from the sun. So at sunset, say on April 15th, exactly 90 days after the spell is cast, Venus will appear in the evening sky as the evening star, or Venus Hesperus. And that moment and that omen will signal, in one respect, the completing effect of the spell. Bear in mind that the spell has a specific intention, but it has a much larger ramification. And I hope to be able to make that clear to you as I proceed with the exposition of the spell in the upcoming talks, which will be coming to you more or less in a fast and furious manner from this moment on. Fine. So far, so good. Now, to conclude, I give you the operative syntax of this spell. This is something that you want to memorize as you would memorize any routine in your mind. If you were playing a game of football, you would have a consultation with a coach on how to execute a certain maneuver. If you're playing a game of chess, if you're playing music, you have a routine of chords that you play. So you're jamming with a group of musicians and you all agree, we're going through this routine of chords and we're going to do this bridge and we're going to arrive at this melody and so forth. So the construction is called the operative syntax of the spell. And the construction is something that you need to memorize so that you can repeat it in your mind easily and routinely without hearing my words. The construction of the spell consists of 3 actions and 2 aspects. Okay? 3 actions and 2 aspects. What are the aspects? One aspect is the actual performance of the rite. That is what Teska does. Perform the ritual. How do I perform it? I perform it as a courting. If you want to know how a courting is done, then follow the links in the description. If you haven't looked already, on the Calico War Party site, there are 2 clips that explain how a courting is done. So I will construct a courting at a particular location, which is called Charlotte's Ridge, and I'll provide you with pictures of this location so you can picture me at that place at the moment I perform the courting. Also, I won't film the courting as I do it, but once the courting is done, I will take photographs of it as proof, and they will also be available to you in the follow-up or in the continuing development of this spell. So the first aspect is the performance of the ritual. The second aspect is the disclosure of the ritual. Now, you are not involved in the performance to the extent that none of you are there with me at the moment I perform this ritual. Not even the Kalika team of 16. But you are there at the same moment in time, observing it, whatever moment that may be in your local time. The second aspect of the ritual is the disclosure of how it works and the disclosure of the target. to the world at large. What I realized in November 8th, 2017, when I was standing on Charlotte's Ridge, was the part of the command syntax that I had been missing at that time. I had the know-how and the technique to cast the killing spell 9 years ago. And there have been a number of practice runs of that spell, by the way. I have done a number of practice runs, and others in the Calico party around me, particularly those who have met me in person, have done practice runs on the killing spell. It takes a lot of practice to become skilled in sorcery, just as it does in any field, whether it be tennis, playing an electric guitar, playing chess, sailing a boat, whatever, you name it, takes practice. And every practice run that has been conducted in the Calico Lethal Strike, as we initially called it, adds force and impact to the later attempts until finally there is a breakthrough and finally there is a success. Think of the Wright brothers and their first flight. It wasn't impressive, was it? But then look at the sky today and consider how you can fly from, San Francisco to Beijing or Singapore or Frankfurt in the course of a day. And we do this routinely today all around the world. Yet there had to be the test run of the Wright brothers and other people to establish the capacity to do this today. Well, the same kind of process is involved here with Gaian Tantric sorcery. So I had the complete ritual, and I recorded the ritual. It was filmed, and I put it on the internet December of 2014, about 9 months into Sophia's correction. Bear in mind, by the way, that Sophia's correction involved a reset process from March 2011 to March 2014, a reset of the divine experiment on Earth. The purpose of the Gaian navigation experiment was to track reset. Since March of 2014, correction is underway. So 9 months into correction, I posted that video of the Calico Lethal Strike explaining how to do it, and I guarantee you it's not easy to do. It's an extremely delicate operation, and you need to be accomplished in the art of courting in order to do it correctly. Anyway, that is the ritual. Then there comes the disclosure, and what I learned in November, what I realized on that day, November 8th, was that the disclosure of this killing spell is part of how the spell works. I was deeply troubled when I got the spell, along with the terma, 9 years ago. And I pondered it over and over again. I pondered the question, well, I can now go up into the mountains of the Serranía de Ronda, of Andalusia, which is a sorcerer's paradise, and I can find a tree and I can cast a lethal spell on a particular target. I could have done that 9 years ago. As I said, numerous people have done it in the interim. But how do you know who the target is? And how do you disclose, how does the world know who the target is so that the world can know that the magic works, that the killing magic works? How can it be disclosed to the world? So I was deeply troubled by this problem of disclosure until November of last year, when I got the answer. The act of disclosure is structured into the very ritual itself, and that's where you come in. Now, there are two parties involved in supporting me in the performance of this killing spell. The first party is my crack team of 16 Calico warriors. Now, they hold the spell with me, and they are involved in performing a particular backup or support activity. That's the Kalika support team. Do you see that? Additional to the Kalika support team are those of you out there, you hear me speak now. You've been following the Mandela effect investigation, perhaps or perhaps not. Maybe you're just picking up this channel as I introduce the Charlotte working. In any case, you belong to what I call the ground force. You're the ground force for this spell, and your participation and witnessing is essential to the success of it. It's essential to the construction of the magic and to its accomplishment. So, you as the ground force perform a certain role of participation. How do you do this? You observe wherever you are in the world the exact moment that the courting ritual is performed, and additionally, you use the app to be provided to you. The app that's provided to you, which is actually a handheld device, allows you to be physically grounded in this magic. You are grounded in her power to perform this magic, just as I am, but you are grounded in a different way. Because you are, for the most part, people who have never met me, we are not in physical presence together, but you hold the spell in the world at large, and that is an extremely valuable component for the success of this spell. You, as the ground force, will have the responsibility for holding the control prompt steady. I'll explain to you exactly what the control prompt is. Well, obviously, what do I have to explain, really? I think one of you already indicated what it is in the comments section. Control prompt is obviously C:/KILL. Clear enough. Nothing mysterious about that. In computer coding, you write the instruction that you wish the software to execute after the backslash. Oh, what backslash? You see the pun here. You might have been asking yourself that question. Well, you damn well ought to ask yourself that question. What backslash? I'm undertaking something here that is dangerous, aren't I? That would be an understatement. I guarantee you it's far more dangerous for the predators and enemies of life and psychopaths and Xenosh than it is for those who undertake open war against them by magic. I announce, I lead, I demonstrate open war by magic against the Xenosh and the enemies of life. And is that a dangerous move for me to make? You might wonder, what backslash? Who's got my back? You never go into war unless someone's got your back, right? Well, it's my great pleasure to tell you, yeah, this is dangerous, but I like danger, and I can't think of a more attractive and delightful act of danger to undertake. My whole life has led to the demonstration of this magic. I am the embodiment of this magic. Tezca. I can perform this magic as Lord of the Smoking Mirror. And I have the protection that backs Lash. is the 10-point MAKARA seal of Kali herself. The 10-point MAKARA seal. MAKARA, M-A-K-A-R-A, is a word in Sanskrit that refers to the constellation of the goatfish or sea goat. And it describes a dragon-like figure, actually a crocodile. MAKARA, crocodile. Now, have you ever seen crocodile boots? Have you ever seen a crocodile belt or a wallet? Do you know how tough the skin of a crocodile is? The goddess Kali, whose party I lead in this adventure, provides to those on the line of battle with her the protection of the 10-point MAKARA seal. Now you'll see the illustration I've uploaded with this talk is from an Aztec codex, and it shows Cipactli. Cipactli is the Aztec equivalent to the MAKARA. It's the crocodile of the Aztec-Toltec zodiac. Cipactli. That is the protective force. That is what backs Lash, you see? So I'm explaining the command prompt, you see? The backslash refers to the protection, not only to the direction of the intent or the instruction, K-I-L-L, but to the protection given to those who execute that command. You are executing the command of the command prompt. You and I together. And this is an untold, unparalleled adventure in magic, starting now and never, never to end. This is the magic that continues to the end of the Kalpa, to the end of this single aeonic day, 2216. This magic continues to the end of the Kalpa. And so, my friends, allies, my fellow Kalikas, and so, to engage in this magic engages you in changing the fate of the human species. Changing the fate of the species, which the species itself cannot do. Only sorcerers, only Gayantantrikas, only the real magicians and wizards, not the make-believe ones, can do this. And oh, can they do this? Well, the only way you can know is by doing it. Now I want to point out in closing two essential factors of this spell. The first one is in the particular effect of the spell. That is to say, the death of the target. The death of the target is not immediate upon the casting of the spell on or around January 16th, 2018. By a cording constructed at Charlotte's Ridge. No. As you will see if you watch the Kalika War Party video, the rigging of the lethal strike uses a sinker. And when the strike is rigged, the sinker hangs from the cording and sways in the wind. It's only when the wind itself moves the sinker, or the wind vibrates through the cording in such a way to dislodge the rusty nail from its toggle position that the spell is cast. The death of the targeted individual is not simultaneous with the cording. It's chosen by the power of the earth itself. Do you see that? This is an extremely important point. Now, of course, when the death of the target occurs in the real world, well, I assure you, the entire world will know it within an hour. And those who participate in this rite, those of you who engage in the performance of this spell as the ground force out there, will know that the magic works. And then you and I together will face the momentous and delightful question of how to continue and where to go next. There has to be one successful spell to prove that the magic works. Do you see that? That is why your role in disclosure is so crucial. The act of disclosure of how the spell is performed and the result of the spell is essential to the success of the spell. You must understand this, and you must repeat over and over again in your mind as a routine that you know, as well as the routine of making yourself a cup of tea or a cup of coffee and toast in the morning. You must know it as well as you know that routine. The courting ritual, the support of the Kalika 16, and the ground force, and all of us involved in the act of disclosing the magic as it occurs. So Teska speaks. Teska speaks to you. I speak to you from the Nahual and from the power of my power animal, whose name is Charlotte. But Charlotte is also the name of a spider in a wonderful book called Charlotte's Web. So in closing, I want you to know that it's called the Charlotte Working. Have I said this already? Can't fucking remember. Anyway, if I haven't, I want you to know that it's called the Charlotte Working in recognition of the spider, Charlotte, in the story Charlotte's Web by E.B. White. The magic that you engage in with me is called spider magic. It's the magic of Spider Woman. And who is Spider Woman? It's one of the thousands of names for Sophia, for the planetary animal mother, she who emanates and supports the web of life. The matrix of life is a spider web, the great web of life in which you live. And she is the Spider Woman who weaves that web. In Persian, in the ancient Avestan texts, they called her Spandarmat. Spandarmat, the angel of the earth. Spanda is an Avestan Sanskrit word meaning vibration or pulse. Mat, you find that phoneme in the name of the Egyptian goddess of the scales, Mat. You might remember in Avatar that there is a line when Jake goes to the sacred tree of the people of Pandora and asks for divine intervention. And Netiri comes and says to him, Ewa does not intervene except to preserve the balance of life. Do you remember that line? Well, that line, whoever wrote it, comes through as a declaration of demonic inspiration. I might have some more to say about Avatar. I just reviewed it recently, and some points of that film are extremely relevant to the Charlotte Working. Anyway, to conclude, and not to drag on too long, Teska says, you must be mindful that the objective of this spell is twofold. Yes, to terminate the target. No fucking doubt about it. But also, the objective of this spell is to engage yourself with the powers of the planetary animal mother, and to make yourself an instrument of the web of life with the power to take life, to change the fate of the species. The human species is more or less a goner. Have you noticed? Have you observed that around the season of Christmas and New Year's? People celebrating this ridiculous and ludicrous vaudeville of a festival, thanks to the Xenos, because it's the Xenos that gave you Christmas. It's the Xenos that gave the world Jesus and the three kings and all that jazz. The human species is more or less a goner. I really don't fucking care about the human species. What I care about is that magical child that lives in me and you. That radiant, luminous child. That's what I care about, because I love myself. And Kali says, be ruthless in self-love. You're not going to save the human species. They're hopeless. They have no direction. They can't even take care of themselves. They follow mindlessly any clue or suggestion fed to them by the Xenos. Kali says, either you are party to my supernatural magic, or you are rubble. Now Teska says, rubble is rubble. I see most of humanity as rubble. But the supernatural magic of Kali is a delight and a danger to perform. And if you want a reason to do it, that's the reason. Will the intervention of the Aeon Sophia in correction save humanity? No, because that's salvationist syntax, and it doesn't apply. It's not about saving humanity. It's not about salvation. It's about enchantment. Enchantment. Magic. Love. Pleasure. The love spell. The death spell. And passage of command. So on that note, I'll leave you for the moment. Teska is at work. Teska is concentrated. There are 10 days leading to the performance of this spell. Give it your closest attention. And as always, heed the obvious. I have some things to say about the obvious actions and charades unfolding in the world today, showing how people are lost in the game of pretending that the President of the United States is bringing down the deep state, for instance. Anyway, heed the obvious and hold to correction. There's your best chance for a future worth living. from the Earth. That's called superior conjunction. And there's a remarkable anomaly connected with the superior conjunction of Venus, which happens, fairly often, every 2 or 3 years or so, maybe more frequently, I don't know. You can check it out. There's a remarkable anomaly connected with the current cycle of the superior conjunction of Venus with the Sun. They are both located right now against the background of the constellation of the Archer, in the middle body of the Archer. You should picture the Archer as a centaur, and the human or male part of the Archer, which can also be pictured as the female Dakini Kurukula, is drawing a bow. So there is a forward hand holding the bow, and there is the hand pulling the string back, and where the vein of the arrow is located near the hand pulling the string, that's where the Sun and Venus are currently located. You see, you get the picture, against the background of the Archer, which is not the sign Sagittarius. Well, the remarkable anomaly is that although the cycle of Venus in superior conjunction happens fairly often, the time that it takes on this occasion for Venus to come out from around the Sun and to appear as the evening star, visible just at twilight in the west, well, that period of time is, or it seems to me, to be extraordinarily long. So you have to go ahead until, about April, really. From now, February, March, April, it's still a little over 3 months from now, Venus will become visible due to its separation from the Sun. So at sunset, say on April 15th, exactly 90 days after the spell is cast, Venus will appear in the evening sky as the evening star, or Venus Hesperus. And that moment and that omen will signal, in one respect, the completing effect of the spell. Bear in mind that the spell has a specific intention, but it has a much larger ramification. And I hope to be able to make that clear to you as I proceed with the exposition of the spell in the upcoming talks, which will be coming to you more or less in a fast and furious manner from this moment on. Fine. So far, so good. Now, to conclude, I give you the operative syntax of this spell. This is something that you want to memorize as you would memorize any routine in your mind. If you were playing a game of football, you would have a consultation with a coach on how to execute a certain maneuver. If you're playing a game of chess, if you're playing music, you have a routine of chords that you play. So you're jamming with a group of musicians and you all agree, we're going through this routine of chords and we're going to do this bridge and we're going to arrive at this melody and so forth. So the construction is called the operative syntax of the spell. And the construction is something that you need to memorize so that you can repeat it in your mind easily and routinely without hearing my words. The construction of the spell consists of 3 actions and 2 aspects. Okay? 3 actions and 2 aspects. What are the aspects? One aspect is the actual performance of the rite. That is what Teska does. Perform the ritual. How do I perform it? I perform it as a courting. If you want to know how a courting is done, what the hell? It's JLL, that Gnostic teacher on the internet. But for the purposes of magic, you can call me Teska. I'm here on January 6th, 2018, believe it or not. And I'm talking to you for the purpose of laying out the design of the spell, namely the killing spell, which goes out to the world under the name of the Charlotte working. To begin, let me say that your response so far to this awesome and daring adventure, this proposal of an extraordinary nature, has been in itself extraordinary. You've really done me proud in the comments that you're leaving on the talks leading up to this event. I really have to say that I couldn't ask for better. You're both civil and savvy, and you're upping the ante as we go along. And that's how it works in the game of magic. You up the ante all the time. Also, I want to say that the timing of this ritual is going to be very precise, and the whole undertaking will proceed with lightning speed. So I'm here to talk about the timing and the precision that is involved in casting a spell. So let the Charlotte working be exemplary of all Gaian Tantric magic in the future. The structure, the design, the timing, the location, the celestial omens, all of these factors go into the casting of a spell on the planetary scale. This is a spell cast on the planetary scale. It's not just a spell intended to kill a particular target. It's more than that. It involves much more than that, as I hope to make clear to you as I proceed in this talk. You can consider this talk to be the pre-briefing for the move into the spell, the move to action. I want to assure you that we're right on time with this project. I myself had a bit of hesitation a couple of days ago. Actually started to record this talk a couple of days ago, I think on the 4th, but something didn't feel right. Well, you know, or maybe you don't know. Who knows? Well, you're going to know now. Sometimes I just need to have a really big cry, and I was feeling the need for a big cry. I still do, actually, and somewhere soon. I'm pretty sure that will break forth. It's not a cry of sadness or tragedy or anything of that sort. Nah. I'm talking gratitude and relief, cry of delight, a sobbing that comes from the deepest depths. I mean, sobbing of joy and gratitude. And that sobbing from the Nahual's heart is sort of like the warrior cry for the spell. The warrior cry is a big cry. And around the 26th of January this month, by which time the spell will have been completed, the spell will have been cast, marks the 9th anniversary of the day that I released Planetary Tantra on the internet. Many of you may know that Planetary Tantra derives from a terma, a wisdom treasure. I received that terma on August 8th, 2008, precisely on time with me as I perform this ritual. There is a window of opportunity of 17 hours centered around January 16th, 2018, in which this ritual will be performed. So I will inform you of the exact moment so that you, wherever you are in the world, can bring your attention to the action that I will be undertaking at that moment. And bring your warrior power and your rage and your love and all the beauty that you can summon out of your life in recognition of she who gives you life. Bring all of that to that moment, and you will have the app in your hand. For right now, I want you to know some of the parameters I'm using as I structure this magic spell, the Charlotte working. The first open demonstration of Gaian Tantric magic before the eyes of the world. There is an omen of war in the sky. Tezca comes from Tezcatlipoca, which is really the name of a Toltec shaman. But there's a close interface between Toltec sorcery and Aztec sorcery. So Tezcatlipoca can be known or identified either as Toltec or Aztec. There are great, great secrets in this ancient Mexican sorcery which have never been revealed. They were sealed away in chambers of memory, which are preserved in the organic light, like, what is the word? Like freezer vaults. And when you go into these freezer vaults, which I call the conicals of the organic light, the memory conicals, you find completely intact holographic images that display performances of magic and also display a great deal of information about the prehistory of the human species, things that have never been written down, actions that have never been or could not ever have been recorded are preserved in the holographic arrays, the holographic hieroglyphic arrays of the conicals in the Five Below region of the organic light. I call it Five Below because when you enter it, you begin to see your own breath, and you have the sensation of being at the temperature of 5 below zero. Sudden drop of the temperature, not as extreme as 5 degrees, but usually around a degree or degree and a half, is common to those who come into contact with the organic light. So anyway, Tezca speaks, and Tezca tells you there's an omen of war in the sky. Now the Aztecs, of course, were intensely interested in omens of war because they were constantly at war in one way or another. Now some of these wars were only ceremonial. They were called flower wars, and they were merely demonstrations of the skill of the warriors from the different tribes in the valley of Mexico. But some of them were wars of killing, and some of them were sorcery contests with extremely lethal consequences. The omen of war that attends this event includes two parts, one you can observe and one you cannot. If you are awake anywhere in the world before dawn during the month of January, you can observe the conjunction of Mars and Jupiter in the constellation of the Scales. Now that is not the sign Libra, that is actually the visible constellation, a composite of stars known as the Scales or Balance. It's located between the Virgin and the Scorpion. Again, I'm not referring to Virgo and Scorpio, which are starless astrological sectors of the ecliptic plane. I'm referring to the actual starry constellations, the real sky zodiac that you can observe, so you might want to go out and do just that. It's easy to see and you really can't miss it. And you might want to use the IT app stellarium.org to orient yourself to what you're going to see. There in the morning sky before the sun rises, and the sun is now positioned in the constellation of the Archer, you will see two bright lights, which are not stars, they are planets, Mars and Jupiter. And if you picture the constellation of the scales as a structure with a vertical shaft, a cross beam, and two pans hanging from the beams, picture the scales in such a way that the pan on the left side is lower, the pan on the right side is higher, and right now, or to be precise, in 2 days, on the 8th of January, these planets are in exact conjunction in 19 degrees of Scorpio, which places them very close to the fulcrum or vertex of the scales, the vertical beam, the vertical post of the scales, okay? The center of the scales. This entire operation of the Charlotte working is timed to this omen of war, which the Aztecs, the Toltecs, and those ancient warrior shaman peoples would have observed with keen attention. During the ensuing period after the spell is cast, around January 15th or 16th, the planet Jupiter will make a retrograde loop around that vertical shaft, the central support of the balance or scales. And the significance of this is something for you to understand imaginatively and conceptually in order to follow through with the ritual in progress. Now there's a second planetary omen which plays a really key role in the structure and construction of this ritual, and that is the superior conjunction of Venus with the Sun. Now, some of you may know that the ancient Aztecs and all the peoples of ancient Mexico, Toltecs, Aztecs, and the Maya, paid extremely close attention to the cycles of Venus. And for them, Venus was in fact the main omen of war and the omen of various periodic tribal rituals that they would perform for the renewal of the life of their culture. So Venus, when you study archaeoastronomy of the ancient sites of Mexico, at Teotihuacan, the sites at, what's the other place I'm thinking of? Well, Chichen Itza, of course, the sites of the Maya and the Olmec, Monte Alban, yeah, the Zapotec temple of Monte Alban, other places like that, many dozens really of temples in Central America were aligned to Venus. Stairway to the Stars by Anthony Aveni, who was a specialist on the archaeoastronomy of Mexico, has a whole chapter on Venus Star Wars and the observation of Venus as an omen of war. Well, the observation of Venus in this case is not something that you can actually observe because Venus is currently, as I speak, behind the sun. It's on the other side of the sun. Now, contained within that terma was the entire kit and formula and method of Gaian Tantric magic, and even the app which you're going to use to perform this magic. But I haven't really disclosed to the world how to use that app. So try to get your mind around that fact, okay? That I've been living with this for 9 years. 9 years, my friends, 9.5 to be precise. 9 years and 3 months is 1 half rotation of the lunar nodes. Well, also, there was something missing that only fell into place in November. For some years now, I've been discussing in the circle of my tantric allies and collaborators, the warriors in the Kalika party of the Nahual of Infinity Ridge, have been discussing the question of command syntax. Command syntax refers to the complete formula that is required to command the power of the earth to perform a spell. So I had the kit for the spell. I had everything that was required. And I also had the assurance. I got the insurance too. The Kali 10 MAKARA seal insurance policy. No, but I digress. I also had the assurance of the Aeonic Mother herself that she would show me 3 spells in recognition for receiving her terma. The first was a love spell. I've talked a lot about that, but I still haven't revealed the key of it. The trick. Second was the death spell, which I am now imparting to you. And the third is a spell of transference called Passage of Command, which I am now also imparting to you. So in the Charlotte working, I impart to you my mastery of sorcery. That is a very great fact. It's something to be joyous about, and something that evokes tears from the deepest place in the heart. Tears like nectar pour into the chalice of the heart, and the chalice overflows and you sob. So don't be surprised if there's a big cry coming your way as well. And as you and I enter this adventure together, bear in mind that since the Turton received the term of Gaia Awakening in August of 2008, he's been holding all of the components required for this spell, but there was one factor missing to complete the command syntax, and that came on November 8th, 2017, as I was standing at the place where this spell will be cast. I call it Charlotte's Ridge. I'll be posting a picture of Charlotte's Ridge so you can see where this ritual is performed. Now that I have the complete command syntax, the moment has come and all the omens are in place. I emphasize to you, as I always have from the beginning of speaking about planetary tantra and Gaian tantric magic, that there is pleasure in the precision of this art. Pleasure in the precision of this art. I am calling you all to be